Good evening. Our top story today, Anthony Richardson. I know it's getting annoying, but we have to talk about this guy again because he's dealing with some shoulder soreness, and there's a lot of like winding and twisting things around this story. I'm here to just break down exactly what the timeline is. This past week, we saw him throwing left-handed. The internet started freaking out. So what does this mean for your fantasy team? Also, is the Tush push at danger of being eliminated in the Philadelphia offense? We've heard some really interesting things from Jalen Hurts around what Kellen Moore is doing to the offense, so we got to break that down and what that means for his and the other fantasy values on that team. Are the Steelers going to be adding a wide receiver too? Like, are they going to be adding Brandon Ayuk? Are they going to be adding one of the 49ers guys and really messing up the hype that we have around George Pickens? So we have like so much to talk about. My name is Toomey. I go by FF Strategist on TikTok. And we're going to get into the nitty gritty of this and what this means for your fantasy teams on Player Profiler today. Oh, sorry. We're cooking with gas. I'm super smooth already. All right. So first story, like I said, so Anthony Richardson has been dealing with some shoulder soreness. So kind of the breakdown of activities that happened were on Wednesday, he initially started complaining about some shoulder soreness, and you could see him in practice. This is according to James Boyd and some of the other beat reporters for the Indianapolis Colts. He was working in the red zone with the trainer. They were kind of like poking and prodding at his shoulder. He was kind of bending over, turning his shoulders around, just trying to get some feel in there. And so on Thursday, you saw that he was not throwing with his throwing shoulder, and that's what really caused everyone to freak out when you started seeing videos of him throwing left-handed or going through his drops and just pump faking. And so it does seem that he is dealing with some level of shoulder soreness. But I'm here to basically tell you, like, let's just, like what Aaron Rodgers used to say, just like, let's everyone relax. Let's relax. Let's just calm it down. And honestly, at the headline of this, what I'm going to tell you is, if anyone is going to be letting his value dip because we're out of minicamp, the next thing we have is training camp, I'm buying the dip immediately. I'm buying Anthony Richardson. If anyone's dipping on him, I'm buying it immediately. All right, so let's just kind of walk through some of the stuff that happened and why I'm still super confident in it. All right, so he had those things happen this week. Shane Steichen, he came out and said that he had some soreness in his surgically repaired shoulder. But here's kind of why I'm just not concerned. All right, so let's just start out. So I think the timing is really important as to why they started to like put him on ice. It was the end of the mini camp, right? So it was the end of it, and so they did not feel, and Shane Steichen said this directly, is like, we did not want to push it. If he was dealing with any level of soreness, they were just going to like rest him. Like, they obviously understand how important he is to the season and what they want to do. So that's why they wanted to make sure that they did not throw him out there. What's up, Jamie? How's it going? Next. And I did not headline this correctly. These are going to be basically 8 reasons why I'm not concerned. So the first one being the timing is critically important. It was the end of the camp. Second is he's been like super, super, super aggressive in his rehab. He was really not supposed to be available for, I believe it was OTAs or one of the activities this spring. He was not supposed to be ready by then, but he was really aggressive about pushing his rehab and was able to go. And so honestly, his rest he didn't really have a lot of planned rest. And a lot of the doctors were even surprised that he had not started to experience soreness earlier than this. So it does seem that, well, yes, soreness is never good. It does seem like this was the first time he experienced soreness, but also all of the doctors were like, wow, it's kind of surprising he hadn't experienced any soreness sooner. So this almost seems to be part of the standard that there's going to be some level of soreness, obviously, when you have a surgically repaired AC joint injury. So I do think, again, that's point 2, not super concerned, especially based on what the physicians are saying. 3, he made a comment on Pat McAfee's show where he said that his shoulder felt 95%. And a lot of people have been saying, hey, I mean, that's not 100%. What's going on? Why are we not freaking out about the fact that he's not 100% where he has his shoulder repaired so long ago? One of the comments that he made in his press conference was basically alluding to the fact that when he made that comment, He was actually more talking about like his football feel, how he felt like his comfort level with being on the field again, and the overall prospect of like how he was going to play. What's going on, Anthony? But like, I think that it obviously was taken out of context. I mean, he said his shoulder felt 95%. At least from his mouth, he was saying like he was actually more talking about his football feel. So again, that's point 3. I think again, I'm not super tripping on this yet. 4th, and this is, I mean, it's kind of like intangible, but it's his demeanor. So the beat reporters were saying when he was doing that practice where he was throwing with his left hand, where he was taking the dropbacks and not throwing, he was just doing a lot of handoffs. You could kind of see a demeanor difference between that practice and obviously how he felt when he was missing games last year. This guy loves football to his core. Like, he is diehard. He loves it, every single bit of it. And so when he was not playing, and not that he was sulking or anything, but you could clearly see, like, he's not super jovial. He's just kind of all business, just trying to pay attention and get through, like, mental reps and stuff last season when he was injured. But at this practice where, like, if think about, like, I mean, he's only 21 years old. So think about the mind of a kid who feels like they're doing great, but now they start to experience some level of, like, shoulder soreness. He would be a little, you could probably tell he'd be a little down, or he would at least not be like smiling, literally like high-fiving everybody, having fun, dancing and stuff. Like, you just wouldn't see that in the practice where he's not throwing. You would probably see him be like a little concerned. So while, yes, that's not like some super tangible data point, I'm going to use it as one. So that's point number 4. All right. So next, they've been very clear, like they have a plan to keep him healthy throughout this offseason. They are going to start having some more built-in rest. So technically there has not been built-in rest in his regimen, but that is going to be a plan moving forward. They're going to start to have more and more built-in rest for Anthony Richardson. They also said, like, there's not going to be any more like YMCA basketball games, or he said that because we all saw the clips of him dunking and almost knocking his head on the backboard. So that's going to be like relaxed as well. He's going to be all focused on football. Next, just overall, the beat writers there. I like a lot of the beat writers across the country on these teams are not great. Indianapolis is really solid. A lot of the guys have been in that market for literally decades. And even while James Boyd, he's one of the newer guys who was kind of the reason why I started talking about this story. He's really smart, really plugged in, has a pretty good rapport, even though I think it's kind of like contentious sometimes with Anthony Richardson. And so his meter in particular, prior to talking to Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen, his concern meter was closer to a 4 out of 10. And then after having those discussions with the coach, with Anthony Richardson, and getting a feel for the rest of the room, it went down to a 2. So while, yes, it's definitely not nothing, I think it would be stupid for a player who only played 10 quarters for it to be nothing. It seems like the concern from the beat writers who are the closest to the team, outside of the team, feel comfortable. I'm going to kind of take their word for it in that sense, especially for like such a good group of beat writers. All right, so that was point number 6. We got 2 more. So, and then I guess the last 2 are more related to like fantasy and what you could potentially do to really feel safe with this pick. So number 7 would be we will have a pre-draft indicator outside of training camp as to what the level of concern will be with Anthony Richardson. So the Colts, Michael Pittman Jr., and Anthony Richardson in particular, are putting together what they're calling like a mandatory pre-training camp like session, a couple of sessions. I don't know exactly where it's going to be, but the Colts have told Anthony Richardson he's not going to be restricted to not throw. So he's going to be able to do his full throwing when he has that like mandatory like player organized camp. And so because of that, we're going to be able to see, like, if he's throwing, I'm not concerned at all. But if he's not throwing, that's where my intent is going to start to go up. So again, this is not a team organized activity, and the Colts have not told him to not throw. That was so many no's. The Colts haven't said that he should not throw. I don't know how to say it better. But if we do see him, and it's going to be like on Instagram and stuff, but if we see the guys together, they're playing, they're having fun, but like Anthony's chucking it, I'm not concerned at all. And then the last thing is not really news related, but to me, the contingency plan for Anthony Richardson is so clear. That's another reason why I'm drafting him everywhere I can, because the contingencies are so easy. Now, you usually have to have a deeper bench, but I'm definitely going to be taking another quarterback if I have Anthony Richardson. The one that continues to just jump out to me is how late of a value you're getting Matthew Stafford. So to me, I'm taking Anthony Richardson. He's still going in the 5th, and I pray his ADP drops after this. But he's going in the 5th. I'm taking him there all day. He could be the QB1 easy. And then I'm taking Matt Stafford in like the 12th round, which is nuts value especially based on how he finished the year. He was going bonkers at the end of the season. So I love that. But the other thing I told you guys too, I think it was last week, the week before, is the easiest contingency plan to guarantee you get a backup is every single week, I'm going to drop the worst player on my team and pick up Joe Flacco for free before the game starts. Like, I will do that in as many leagues as I can before rosters lock, just to ensure myself, if he doesn't make it through that game, I got Joe Flacco. And I think in this Shane Steichen scheme, if we get the Joe Flacco, at least I was playing at the end of last season, yeah, he's going to throw some interceptions for sure. But in this scheme, Shane Steichen schemes these guys open like crazy. So I just think that there's just so many reasons why I cannot be concerned about Anthony Richardson, and I'm still going to be drafting him every single place I can. Now, I'm not going to go over it too much, but like, his upside is easily QB1 with no close contention to it. Like, he was on pace in his 10 quarters of football, if you really extrapolate those 10 quarters for a full season, to be over 29 points per game and over 500 fantasy points, which was nearly 100 points better than Josh Allen last year, who was a QB1. So again, that's why the upside is there. And again, I'm so not concerned about it based on all those reasons, especially since you should be easily able to get a contingency plan for Anthony Richardson, whether you draft a quarterback and hold him on your bench all season like a Matthew Stafford, or you do the week-by-week thing with Joe Flacco. There are options for you to not get boned if Anthony Richardson goes down with an injury. So again, it's really limits the risk, but you have all the upside in the world to literally win your league. All right. So I've been talking about Anthony Richardson a lot. I'm going to try to take a hiatus from it. Hopefully we don't have any other news about him for a while, but we're going to talk about some of these other stories on the other side of this break. But let's hear from the podfather about Underdog.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly. Especially now, it's Best Ball Mania season, baby. Best Ball Mania 5. I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems. But they have the NBA pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the offseason. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
Make sure you guys use Underdog code Underworld. Make sure you guys are drafting in best ball. That's the best way to continue to get better at this. But obviously you could win like millions of dollars. So, hey, why not? All right, so next story I have here is, are the Vikings going to be using a running back platoon? So apparently reporter Harrison Phillips believes that Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler are going to be a 1-2 punch. And if you cannot tell, I'm being very facetious because Harrison Phillips is a nose tackle. People are running with this story, and I don't know why people can't look at a roster and tell, oh, that's a nose tackle talking about the running back depth. Come on. Like, what are we doing, guys? Come on. All right, whatever. I actually saw a place report that it was an offensive line. I was like, well, I mean, I don't know. He probably does some of the goal line stuff where he gets on the field, but he is a D tackle. He's a nose tackle, and he's talking about the depth of the running back room. Whatever. I'm clearly, the headline of this story to me is like, I am not concerned of this at all. This is not going to be a 50-50 split in Minnesota. Aaron Jones is going to get the rock like crazy. Aaron Jones last year, he totaled over 1,100 total yards, 6 touchdowns in 13 games, including the playoffs. But down the stretch, he was going bonkers. So I think it was like, his last 5 games, he had over 100 yards in every single game. Looking at it, his lowest yards per carry was 5.6. And that was against Dallas, where he had 3 touchdowns. Like, he went crazy down the stretch. Not a ton of receiving, but he clearly showed you, like, I still got the juice even at my age. Ty Chandler's not bad, but Ty Chandler truly put up like backup level numbers, and he didn't really do anything to show you like, yeah, I could be a guy, or I can even be a guy who should be dictating getting 50% of the work. So on 94 carries, he had 419 yards, 3 touchdowns, 16 receptions for 116 in 8 games. So I mean, really closer to like 50-ish yards per game, even though I know he didn't start every single one and have the full workload. Just nothing super impressive. And I think just again, for a lot of reasons, Aaron Jones is the clear RB1 and Ty Chandler is a clear handcuff. If there's not going to be a 50-50 split, I honestly don't even think it's going to be a 60-40 split. I think if Aaron Jones is on the field, he is going to dominate the touches because that's kind of what McConnell does. So here's the reasons why I feel that way. So they gave him a 1-year deal. So I get it's not like they gave him a 3-year deal, but they gave him a 1-year deal, $7 million. That on an annual basis puts him at a top 10 running back level. And while that's not, I mean, it's not super impressive. He's like tied for 10th. I believe when you bring in running backs at that number, especially, you're bringing them in to start and probably get a decent amount of work. I think the timing of the deal or the year duration of the deal is more to do with the fact that he's super old. And also he's been injury prone, which I think, again, is really important. Like if you can get Ty Chandler, pick him up as a handcuff, I think he'd be pretty solid. But we saw him last year. He's solid. He's not like super amazing. He's solid when he gets a chance. We already talked about down the stretch, like he really dominated. But I also wanted to look at the last time we had, this head coach, McConnell, who runs the offense, with a back who should dictate getting the lion's share of the workload. Last year was just a complete dumpster fire that the running backs were not good, including Ty Chandler, but the running backs were not good. But let's just look at even like the last year that he had Dalvin Cook. And that was his first season. So Dalvin Cook, we all know, wasn't super amazing, but he still put up 1,000 yards that year, 4.4 yards per carry. But when you just look at the opportunity share, it really makes you think like, wow, he really loves to give one guy the ball. So Dalvin Cook that year was 5th in opportunity share, 5th in snap share, 6th in total carries, 5th in red zone touches. Now, Madison, who a lot of people was kind of like an unknown fantasy darling at the time, and people wanted him to get on the field. So you would think like kind of like similar to Ty Chandler, he's going to get on the field some. Not for real. All right, so outside of the times when Dalvin Cook went down with an injury, Alexander Madison was 80th in snap share. Again, Dalvin Cook was 5th. Madison was 80th. He was 65th in snap share. That's Madison compared to Dalvin Cook being like 5th again. And then his opportunity share for Madison was 65th. Dalvin Cook's was his carries were 65th. And then Dalvin Cook's was 6th. Red zone touches, 5th for Dalvin Cook, 44th for Alexander Madison. It's just night and day. It was a clear RB1 situation. They were not splitting reps. Now you could say, yeah, but it's very different. Aaron Jones, clearly injury-prone, older running back. They're going to split the work more, and I for sure see you there. But it's still going to be a dominating share from Aaron Jones' side. It's not going to be like a 50-50. It's going to, at the worst, probably be 60-40, unless Aaron Jones gets banged up, which is fair, again. So I think that Aaron Jones has such a major opportunity. Another thing that was really interesting in Dalvin Cook's numbers were he ran the 2nd most routes in the league under Kevin McConnell his last year in Minnesota and McConnell's first year as the head coach. He had the 24th highest target share at the running back position, which is very odd numbers there. Like 2nd most routes, but he just wasn't getting targeted that much. But at least that is really encouraging for such an elite route runner in Aaron Jones. And I think for a player like a Sam Darnold, if he's going to be starting, we've seen the clips in camp. Like I could see that connection really blossoming as a nice check down option because Sam Darnold is so scared of getting sacked. He's seeing ghosts all the time. So I think, again, I expect Aaron Jones carries probably not to be dramatically crazy like at the end of the season we saw last year. And obviously health is a concern with him. But if he is healthy, he could be very dominant whenever he's on the field. And I truly believe that Ty Chandler is an exclusively handcuff option. But now you're still kind of getting him. Hopefully this type of story doesn't raise up his draft stock, but you're still getting him in like 10th, 11th, 12th round in like a 12-team league. So he's still at a really reasonable price to get him as a handcuff. But again, he is exclusively a handcuff. All right. Next story. And don't freak out about stories from nose tackles, man. Like, God, that's the biggest thing. Like, he's a damn nose tackle, bro. That's not even like a middle linebacker or something who's on the field all the time. Nose tackles are not always on the field. It's just whatever. All right. Next story is about Philadelphia. So there was a report that apparently 95% of Philly's offense is different. That was according to Jalen Hurts. And so this is another quote from Hurts. He said, "I think the goal coming in was to learn Kellen's offense and to master it. And I think that's been a process. And by the end of it, I want it to be mine and have it my own way." Hurts told reporters after recent OTA practice. And so the biggest thing that I was concerned about is Kellen Moore runs a conservative offense, so they're going to run the ball. But when you say 95% of an offense is changing, the first thing that comes to my mind is like the tush push potentially getting reduced. That's just a lot of the offense to change without that one play changing. So let's just talk a little bit more about Kellen Moore, and I'll kind of run back to the tush push. All right, so Kellen Moore, like I said, he's been relatively conservative, and when he's had the opportunity, he's been pretty run heavy. So from a rush attempts per game standpoint, let's just look at the last 5 seasons as an offensive coordinator. So he was 9th in, so this is rush attempts per game, in kind of backwards order and ending in LA. So 9th, 15th, 12th, 7th, 24th in LA. Now you could see that I think they had the 3rd most pass attempts per game in LA, but I mean, they had no rushing offense and the team completely fell apart, especially when Herbert got injured. So you could say that season was a wash, but he also had one of the worst, if not the worst, run blocking offensive line in the NFL with LA. And you could tell just based on his years in Dallas what he wants to do. Prior to that, I think that in Dallas for Dak's last season, they had the 19th most pass plays a game. They're just super, super efficient. And I think that's what they're trying to get to, because Hurts last year was closer to like 21st in pass attempts per game. So it's probably going to be a similar situation here in Philly with Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts paired together. But if you just, and this is just me like making an assumption that they have not directly said anything about the tush push. I scoured the internet to see if Kellen Moore has said anything about the tush push, and I haven't seen it yet. But still, like, you got to consider it even more just from a good football standpoint. Like, yes, that play is super crazy effective, but Jalen Hurts, year of the Super Bowl, started dealing with injuries at the end of the regular season. Last year, he was clearly banged up. That knee was giving him issues for a long time. And so you really have to consider, like, are you going to continue to put this guy in such injury risk every single time there's a short yardage gain, especially now when you have Saquon right behind him? The play is obviously effective. So last year was run at a 90% success rate, the tush push. The year before that, Super Bowl year, 94% success rate. Significantly better than the rest of the league, who runs it closer to like a 70-ish% rate, which is not bad at all, but is nowhere near what the Eagles do. And so it's just, I'm just maybe personally scared just because 30% of Jalen Hurts' production thereabouts comes from that, literally that one play, 30% of his production. I may just be freaking out, but to me, I guess the biggest headline would be, I expect the tush push to remain a part of this offense. It would be kind of stupid to completely eliminate it, but I expect the success rates to completely, like, to continue to like come down a little bit. And I also expect them to run that play less than they traditionally do. Obviously, you got Saquon in the backfield. But I just think that injury risk, you got to consider it with a G'd up quarterback like that. How much do you want to continue to put him in harm's way, even with a play being that effective? And because of that, I think that there's significant risk to Jalen Hurts' fantasy value. He had 15 touchdowns last year. And I guess like, instinctively was going to put him probably closer to like 13, 14 touchdowns rushing this year in my projections. But if you consider those changes that I say may happen based on these types of reports, if he's getting like 10 rushing touchdowns or less, that's a major hit to his value. A guy who would be like locked in with a floor nearly of like QB3 or 4 because of that rushing, even if he doesn't play well, you're getting closer to the 10-12 range if he gets down to like 8 rushing touchdowns, and his passing numbers don't change dramatically. So it kind of concerns me a little bit with Jalen Hurts, just from a floor perspective. I still think he's safe to take, but I'm not really interested in taking him in like the 3rd round where I've seen him go. So just kind of see what happens with that. Let's see. Also, I think that Saquon would be obviously the big winner here. So the closest thing the thing that makes me like excited more about Saquon than I've probably been all offseason is just really looking at Kellen Moore's system and really looking at what he wants to run. I don't want to just completely take this last year and throw it out, but I kind of want to based on the personnel they had, the type of quarterback they had, the running player, the running back, etc. that they had there too. And I think really the offensive line is the biggest difference night and day. This Philly offensive line will be the closest thing that he's had to that Dallas unit in 2022 where Zeke and Pollard were running roughshod on the league. And so I do think if he has that type of system where your running backs are getting a ton of work, your running backs are getting a ton of receptions, Saquon could be much better than I even initially thought, even if he's going to be competing with Jalen Hurts for rushing touchdowns. I think that Saquon definitely could be in he's already going to round 2. He should be really pushing first round based on his upside if he could stay healthy. All right, let's see. Next story. I'm trying to cruise through it today. All right. So I think this is about the Steelers. Yeah, so the Athletics' Mark Kaboly, I never say his name right, said he thinks the team will add a legit number 2 wide receiver before the season starts. He also said it would be it would show a lack of awareness and urgency at the front office opts not to bring in outside talent. Which I think from a football standpoint makes a ton of sense. I really, 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 really hope that doesn't happen for George Pickens' sake. So let's just kind of take a couple steps back. Apparently, during the draft, the Steelers were like this close to pulling off a trade for one of the San Francisco receivers. I don't think there's been like a solidified report about exactly which one it is, but most people assume it was between Ayuk and Debo. I don't think it was for Jennings, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, apparently they were like super, super, super close. And many people, including like the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Ray Fittipaldo, I should read these names before I say them live, like try to practice them first. So Ray Fittipaldo said he believes the trade is still very likely to happen prior to the start of the season, that the 49ers are the team to watch for communication with the Steelers. I'm not going to read this quote. So basically he's just summarizing what I just said there. And I think that, again, without these guys getting traded to the Steelers, I think that George Pickens has like top 5 wide receiver upside this year. I truly do. His skill set, the way that Russell Wilson sometimes will lock onto his number 1 guy, especially in the red zone, the fact that DJ's not there anymore, there's a lot of reasons to really love just the target opportunity that this guy's going to get, and also how well he does in contested catch situations, even if he's not getting a million miles of separation like you would hope. But his value is going to plummet off a cliff if either one of those guys are traded there, particularly Brandon Ayuk. If Brandon Ayuk goes to the Steelers, that's like worst case scenario for me. So let's just talk about Pickens. He really is like a number 1 level talent. And even in games where DJ was there, DJ wasn't there, he's still shown his dominant capability. Down the stretch, he was a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 9 in 2 of his last 3 games, and DJ was there. He really took off, especially with Mason Rudolph down the stretch. And that's what's really kind of exciting me and exciting a lot of us about the prospect of a George Pickens. There are some concerns, like Mark Kaboly said that George Pickens is going to be upset now starting to see number 1 coverage slide his way. But if you've looked at him the last 2 seasons, in all honesty, he's done that to number 1 corners before too. So I'm not particularly concerned about him dealing with number 1 corner talent. I think that he's the type of receiver where you throw it at him and let him go get it, even if he's getting blanketed in coverage, because he's not like the best separator in the world, but he comes down with the ball. So I'm completely not worried about that personally. And I think that, again, without a DJ who dominated target share, it's just one of those situations where you have immense talent and you now have significant opportunity. Even in a run heavy scheme, I still think he's going to eat in that offense. I said it before and I'll say it again. If you're concerned about what happened with Drake London last year, I hear you, but I think that George Pickens is a very different receiver. I wouldn't even say he's better. I just say stylistically what Arthur Smith does with so much play action off the run game and the way that he puts his receivers in a situation to run after the catch, it is definitely more of a scheme that fits the A.J. Brown style receivers, and I think George Pickens is closer to that style. Not as good, but that style of a receiver. versus a Drake London who is great in a lot of respects, but really, 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 really sucks after the catch. So it was just kind of apples and oranges with that type of scheme for a Drake London, and honestly something that we should have known before that season played out this past year. But if the Steelers add another legit receiver, one, if they add Brandon Ayuk, it's not going to be a number 2. So maybe, hopefully this story is eliminated. If Brandon Ayuk is added to the Steelers, he is the number 1 guy. Brandon Ayuk is significantly better than George Pickens. He is a significantly better route runner. He's also like twitched up like crazy as well. Great blocker. He does everything well. Like, he wins in every part of the field. He wins really well in the red zone. He just sometimes doesn't get the opportunity. So if he's on that team, he's the number 1 guy, and George Pickens' stock falls off a cliff. Now, Debo, I would not be as concerned about Debo. I think that Brandon Ayuk and George Pickens do a lot of similar style things that they like. I mean, they're very similar in certain respects. I, again, think Brandon Ayuk is better. Debo is just such a unique style of player that, yeah, I could see Pittsburgh using him as like a gadget role, throwing him in the slot, just giving him screens, giving him short passes, really low ADOT like he's continued to have his whole career, and letting him do stuff after the catch. So I would be concerned about it for George Pickens. I think touchdown upside would be a concern for me. I feel like Arthur Smith would love to have a player like that. And Debo kind of feels like a Steeler-style player. Like, he feels like a good fit for that team. But I would not be as concerned with George Pickens. He'd probably fall like around maybe round and a half. But for Brandon Ayuk, he's going to fall pretty far. If Brandon Ayuk is on that team, I am not interested, because I could see a guy who does create separation at every part of the field. A guy, his routes are some of the best, like top 5 in the league in Brandon Ayuk. I could see Russell Wilson hyper-targeting that guy over George Pickens. So that would be my biggest concern, because in this scheme, you will not be able to support 2 guys. You could support George Pickens in a run-heavy offense. You cannot support Ayuk and Pickens. Like, Arthur Smith, over his last 5 years as either head coach or OC, has been 25th in pass. So these are pass attempts: 25th, 31st, 19th, 32nd, 30th. Like, you're just not going to throw the ball enough in that scheme to support 2 receiving options. That's why I'm even not as hype as a lot of people are on Pat Freiermuth. I do think this is going to be the George Pickens show, and they're going to run the ball like crazy. And every now and then, Freiermuth's going to pop off, but they cannot support multiple options. All right. So that's it on the Steelers. The last thing I just wanted to touch on real quick before we head out of here, just a couple quick hits. There was a story saying Malik Neighbors is going to be the new Odell Beckham. While that seems like super hyperbolic, I could really see it. I'm a massive fan of Malik Neighbors and his talent. I'm a big yards after catch guy, as you could probably tell by the stories I've already talked about. He's one of the best in this draft. He'll be one of the better yards after catch guys in this league. And the way that Brian Dable schemes his receivers up, especially on crossing routes, I think he's gonna be one of the best from a yards after catch perspective, the second he touches down, because Brian Dable is going to get the ball in his hands and let him work. And I also think they're going to be in a lot of high passing situations, especially with the retirement of Darren Waller, who's had an amazing career. Really can't speak more highly of the guy, especially from a character standpoint. All the stuff he's gone through to then still become a superstar at the position after switching positions. So he's an amazing guy, amazing talent. But now that he's out of the picture, it is the Malik Neighbors show. Even for a team who's not going to pass the ball a ton, Malik Neighbors is going to be getting 10 to 12 targets a game. So yes, I do think he has that Odell Beckham first year upside. The only difference is I think that Odell, clearly his first year, it took him a little while to get cooking. But then once he did, he took off and went crazy. I think Malik Neighbors could do that from jump. So I really believe in Malik Neighbors. Another story from the Vikings saying that they're taking it slow with JJ McCarthy. No duh. I think that he is going to likely be the third string when they start the season. I think it's going to be Sam Darnold. People forget Nick Mullins is still there. He knows the offense better than JJ. And then they'll probably bring along JJ slowly. Now, I think that, honestly, all 3 guys are going to play. I have no faith in Sam Darnold. I think he's going to probably throw up all over himself like he traditionally does. I think Nick Mullins, we know what we're going to get there. They're going to throw the ball with him, but he's going to throw a million picks too. And then JJ McCarthy, at some point, if you're just getting such terrible quarterback play, you might as well be getting the rookie his reps. I think just kind of I don't want to be hypocritical though, but I still don't care as it relates to Jay Jettas. I've been a guy who's kind of been a little depressed on my Jay Jetta stock this whole offseason because the quarterback play there is going to suck. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be awful. But I really had to take a step back and say, Justin Jefferson he's the best receiver in the NFL. So if they're going to throw the ball 30 times a game, he's still going to get his 11 targets. Like, he's still going to dominate target share. He never scores a ton of touchdowns anyway, so his touchdown upside, I don't think it's going to really dramatically change. He's always killing it. He's never had below 17, I think 17.9 PPR points in a fantasy season, and that was his rookie year. And while I get it, he's not playing with Kirk Cousins anymore. That's just one of those guys where you don't want to overthink it. Like, there's a lot of that happening at this point of the offseason. Don't overthink it. Draft Jay Jettas, regardless of the terrible quarterbacks he's going to be playing with. They're going to run the ball a lot, like I talked about with Aaron Jones earlier this episode. But yeah, don't overthink it. Just draft Jay Jettas, regardless of the fact that these quarterbacks are garbage. All right. And then the last story, Cortland Sutton says he's going to report the mandatory minicamp. I think that matters not at all. I'm not interested in the passing options on that team. I think he super benefited from the 10 touchdowns that he got with Russell Wilson last year, and I do not think that that's going to repeat itself, especially when you've added like some decent receivers to that team. Like Josh Reynolds will sneakily take away too many targets from a player like a Cortland Sutton based on his route running and his ability to get separation. Troy Franklin, you never know if Bo Nix starts, if he's going to just hyper target his boy. Marvin Mims, everyone's continuing to talk him up, and he has the talent to do it. So I just worry about like this offense being really spread out, especially since like last year, Russell Wilson hyper targeted Cortland Sutton in the red zone, but throughout, like, he actually wasn't super high from like a total target share perspective. This offense does dictate that you spread the ball around. So I'm kind of out on Cortland Sutton. If he's available and literally at the back end, like near the very end of my draft, I'll take a shot on it just because he's more talented than the other guys are. But I'm not like super stoked about Cortland Sutton. The only other play I would have is draft him super late and just pray he gets traded midseason, which is very possible because there's been trade discussions ever since Jerry Jeudy was shipped off to Cleveland. And then the last story, which is like kind of like a very benign story, is McCole Hardman re-signed with the Chiefs, and it's one of those things where I think that Travis Kelce has a bounce back year. I think that people are super sleeping on him. I think Patrick Mahomes comes back in a major way. I mean, he threw some of the most interceptions he's ever done last year. He threw only 27 touchdowns, and he's typically in the like 38, 36, 41 range of touchdowns. So I do think that he comes back strong. But when you start to like break down the receiving targets in this offense, it's just too many guys right now. Even guys who we don't even think are good, if they're on the team, they're just taking away too many targets. Like you got obviously Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice. We don't know what the suspension is going to be. It's still been a while since like they haven't announced anything yet. So I feel like it's going to be closer to 3 games, like I said earlier this offseason. You got Marquise Brown, you got Hollywood there now, who's going to be a big deep target. You got Xavier Worthy, who you drafted in the first round, but then you still have all those other dudes. Like you got like Mecole Hardman, you still got Kadarius Toney's on this roster, and Sky Moore is still on this roster. So unless they start cutting people, it's really gonna like impact the upside for all of these receiving options to me. Like I think in my projections, I even had to zero out. Like I zeroed out Kadarius Toney because I think he's gonna get cut. But like if they do not cut guys, like Marquise Brown's ceiling is gonna get capped a little bit. Xavier Worthy is going to get capped a little bit. Rashee Rice is going to get capped a little bit. I think Travis Kelce is still safe, but his total yards is probably going to get capped to me. I think he's going to just do better with touchdowns. And so, yeah, just keep an eye on what's going to happen in this receiving room. The biggest takeaway to me still is that Patrick Mahomes is going to like light it up this year. So I think that that's not changing, but it's just about how are we going to be splitting up these targets if all of these guys are still going to be on the team. They got to cut somebody. All right, guys, I think that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for hopping in here today. Really appreciate it. Before you get out of here, make sure that you are subscribing. Make sure that your notification bell is turned on to know whenever we go live. We do this every single day at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I was late today. I'm sorry. We started at 7:15. But I want to make sure that we had all the show prepared for you to give you a great episode. Make sure you guys go to PlayerProfiler.com, see all the amazing tools we have for you there to make sure that you can win your leagues. And also, again, my name is Toomey. I go by FF Strategist on TikTok. You can follow me there. You can follow us on TikTok as well. I'm doing a lot of content there too for Player Profiler as well as Player Profiler News. So yeah, guys, thanks so much for hopping in here. Make sure to like this video. Like right now, you're thinking about it, like the video right now. Just like it right now. That really helps us out. And I'll see you guys next week, but you can see another one of our guys tomorrow. Take care.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.